you can't talk about nutrition without talking about the keto craze. I know that that was a big deal when I had a dog who had cancer about 5 or 7 years ago. And I even contacted one of the keto places that designed a diet for him. It actually ended up facilitating his death, and now I know why. Can you explain why that diet is so harmful and disease-causing?
Yeah, well, it's a disaster for for humans. People don't like to hear that because it does work for losing weight. If that's all you care about is losing weight, keto works because your body can't store protein. And what keto does for humans is it gets the processed grain products out of their diets. It gets the processed foods in general out of their diet. So people lose weight, they think it's great. And that makes them ironically more open to feeding meat to their dogs, feeding real food to their dogs.
Yeah.
I've seen this trend of people coming into the group who say, yeah, I'm on keto myself, so I'm all over feeding meat to my dogs, even if it's raw meat and bones and whatever. So unfortunately, it's a, it's a modified, for dogs, it's sort of a modified PMR diet, and it has the same problems. It doesn't correct the problems of PMR. It adds to them, actually, because keto invites a lot of fat into the diet. But it also makes people carbohydrate phobic. And PMR feeders and people who are following a keto diet for themselves, they tend to lump all carbohydrates together. And there are some carbs that absolutely do not belong in a human or canine body. And when you get rid of those, everybody's going to be healthier. But you can't put all carbs in the same category. Fruit is a carbohydrate. Vegetables are carbohydrates. The quinoa that we feed dogs is a carbohydrate. And even though it's a high protein carbohydrate, it's still a carbohydrate. But so that might be an adjustment for people to get used to feeding their dog plant foods and understanding why we feed plant foods. It's really not so much that dogs need plant foods in their diet, because a well-situated dog out in the wild might get by without ever eating plant foods. It could happen. They live in a very rabbit populous area or something. The Arctic wolves eat, mice all day long. So they might not ever have to eat plant foods. But what it does in the domestic dog's diet is it prevents that overconsumption of very high value, rich foods and very high fat foods like meat. So.
And helps the owner who may be fasting averse, gives them
Right.
a meal to feed.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A harmless meal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about bile vomiting. It's actually the topic that led me to you, because Olive was vomiting like clockwork every single morning, 5:30. Would wake up and vomit for weeks. And so I started looking online to see if I could find out why this was happening. She was being fed a barf diet at the time. And I came across an article that you had written, and that's how I discovered rotational monofeeding. Couldn't believe that, it helped it so quickly. And she stopped doing it literally like the day after I started. I fasted her, started her on plant foods, and then there's no more bile vomiting. I don't know if it happens that quickly with everyone. It doesn't seem like it, but can you talk a little bit about what that is and how you can fix it?
Yeah, it was kind of a byproduct. My discovery of that was kind of a byproduct of my discovering that fat was what was causing my dog's ear inflammation, because he was also bile vomiting very regularly, especially when I was in the kitchen preparing his food. He would vomit bile. And so I put all these pieces together, and I don't think anybody, at least I've never read that anybody else has done that before and figured out what's actually causing this thing. Because what vets and others have found out is that if you keep food in the stomach very frequently, then that bile that's being backed up into the stomach for some reason, and I think it's because it's being overproduced because there's so much fat in the diet,
Yeah.
that bile that gets backed up into the stomach is never concentrated because it's always diluted by the presence of food.
Mm.
So if you just feed the dog more frequently, then they won't vomit bile. But that's not a solution to the problem. That's
Right.
that leads to overfeeding, and then you still have the fat issue. And that overfeeding of fat is not only going to cause bile to overproduce, it's also going to create other problems in the body. So what you want to do
Right.
is you want to find out what's causing the bile to be overproduced, and do something about that. So people find sometimes when they come to this way of feeding and they want to fast their dogs, they really do understand the power of fasting. They're into it themselves, they want to do that for
Mm-hmm.
their dogs, but their dogs vomit bile. And it's a matter of personal preference, really. But some people say that that they can't stand to see their dog vomiting bile, and you have to think it's very uncomfortable for a dog for that to happen. Other people just say that they, power through it
Mm-hmm.
and put up with it. And sometimes when dogs have that problem, even feeding doesn't solve it, because
Right.
you have this mess in the stomach, and the dog will sometimes vomit the whole meal.
Yeah.
So anyway, the best way is to just lower the fat content. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen quickly with my dog. My dog was 9 when I started making these, changes
Mm-hmm.
to his diet with fat. And it took probably a year for him to stop vomiting bile completely. And I
Interesting.
noticed that problem with my puppy too. When after that year that I fed her PMR,
Yeah.
she was vomiting bile, and she
Hmm.
never vomits bile, never. And that was she'll be 3 next month, and so it's 2 years now. That So it just seems very clear to me that that's the answer to the mystery. And
When
um,
she started vomiting your puppy bile, did you start plant foods immediately? Did you fast? What did you do?
I at that point started a high plant rotation. I mean, I shouldn't say high plant, because we gradually moved to that. I think I probably started with a one-on-one, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even less, like one plant food a week to see how she would do.
Yeah.
And even then we still had a few problems. So I very gradually added
Okay.
the plant foods in, and I think that's a solution for people, because it's an easy way for a dog to heal, to eat
Yeah.
plant foods.
When you are feeding commercial food,